Dr. Danya Shashtaran Palapallil, MBBS MD Pharmacology, MBA HRM. She did her MBBS from GMC Kottayam and MD Pharmacology from GMC Thiruvananthapuram. She did her MBA under Annamalai University. She joined the Medical Education Service in 2010 March and now is currently a professor since May 2021. She's a faculty at NMC Nodal Center for Faculty Development, a life member of Indian Pharmacological Society, National Association of Pharmacology and Therapeutics. She has published 40 papers in various journals with 277 citations. Currently, she is pursuing her PhD under Kerala University of Health Science, and also she is an Assistant Nodal Officer, Multidisciplinary Research Unit. Welcoming you, ma'am.
Good morning, all. Hope I am audible now. Sorry for that technical glitch. Should I start from the beginning? So I'm starting from the beginning. So this is a brief review of antibiotic use in livestock. And I'm Dr. Danya. I'm not an expert in this subject. And we'll be going through the topic in a reflection model. That is what happened, so what, and what next. So this is a retro slide. We have all studied this in our grade 3 and 4. And we all know what are the food animals. And of course, they are producing food for human consumption, like the eggs, meat, and milk. So why do we use antibiotics in animals? For treatment of specific disease that we all know. Then what else? Secondly, as non-medicinal for growth promoters, there is established scientific record which shows that use of antibiotics in livestock will increase the productivity, be the size of the egg or the meat. Thirdly, as a prophylactic and metaphylatic. What do we mean by prophylactic use of antibiotics? That means that the whole herd is given antibiotic before starting of the disease. Those who at risk are given antibiotic. And what do we mean by metaphylatic use of antibiotic? That is, a few of the animals in the herd, they are having symptoms, and when we are giving the antibiotic to the rest of the herd for preventing infection, that is, these animals are healthy, and because these three are infected, the whole herd is getting antibiotic. That is called as metaphylatic use of antibiotic. Coming to the roadmap of history of antibiotic use in livestock, it all started with Prontosil in 1938, and then gramicidin was extensively used for the treatment of mastitis, and sulfaquinoxylin was used in poultry. Later, the antibiotic fermentation products that was used as a cheap alternative for the vitamin B12 supplements. And as Gafur sir has already mentioned, it was used extensively as growth promoter without the prescription of the veterinarians. In plants, for preventing infection, streptomycin was used, and for preventing degradation of the fish, shellfish, and poultry, tetracycline was used. The FDA put out notice that penicillin residues should be checked in milks. And mind you, these all started in the 1940s and 1950s. What happened in the 1960s and 70s is that farmers started increasingly using antibiotic for the quality of the carcass that was produced because of the hormone replacement, for preventing degeneration of the meat. And monensin was used for preventing bloating, and the hints of resistance due to antibiotic use in livestock started developing in the 1960s. Blastocidin, kasugamycin, polioxin, validamycin, all these antibiotics were used for treatment of various diseases. There was surge of non-medicinal uses in 1970s, especially in the maritime environment. And along with the introduction of organic fertilizers in the 1980s and tranquilizers in the 1990s, the use of antibiotics continued to increase in livestock. Tons of antibiotics were seen in the feed and water, along with mycelia waste, especially in Brazil, which was the largest producer of the poultry, and China, which is the largest producer of pig. And we all know that Gafur sir told by 2010, there was a proper discussions by the antibiotic stewardship committees, and antibiotic reductions and withdrawal was talked about in the whole world. Actually, by 2016, the European Union banned the use of antibiotic as growth promoters. Now, the China followed suit, and what did China do? China imported the colistin to India, and in India, even in 2017, colistin was openly marketed as a growth promoter or metaphylatic. So this is not the end. This is actually the beginning. What was the beginning? Selling at the agriculture fairs or directly in the farms. The farmers who were interested with the thought of increased performance boosters, they tried whatever was available, whatever antibiotic was sold. And this is a old German term, that is Autobahn Tierarzt, that is motorway veterinarians, that is veterinarians who have never seen animals. They prescribed growth promoters sitting in the cars. So this led to divergent national regulations, introduction of antibiotic stewardship committees, and restrictions. So we have done with what happened. Now, there were a lot of increase in the social culture as well. The books by Shell with Modern Meat, the book by Rifkin, Beyond Beef, and The Antibiotic Paradox by Stuart B. Levy. These books, which are still available on Amazon, they are a war cry against the use of antibiotics in livestock. Now, so what? Dr. Hari has already mentioned the flow of drugs. Let us specifically concentrate on the flow of antibiotics. So, in the livestock, the antibiotics that they use for growth promotion or as metaphylatic or prophylactic or for treatment, they are excreted, or the animal feeds that are not consumed, and the farmyard manure, again via the excreta, they reach the soil and groundwater. And from the soil, they again leach into the main water bodies. And from there, where does they reach? They reach the plants and us. And the plants, they are consumed again by the cattle, and the meat, those who eat meat, the antibiotics reach back them. So here is the importance of One Health that everyone has been telling from the start of the webinar. So we need to use the antibiotics prudently to save the animals, us, and the environment. We know that the antibiotic that is leaching into the soil, and the soil bacteria, actinomycin, that is the source of drug like erythromycin, streptomycin, and tetracycline. And it can cause, the use of such antibiotics can cause destruction of the natural soil microbes and emergence of antimicrobial resistance, and a report of up to 8 to 15 drugs developing multi-drug resistance have been seen in the literature. And colonization and transmission of antibiotic-resistant bacteria in the livestock have been seen. So what happens on colonization and transmission of antibiotic-resistant bacteria among the food-producing animals? So via their feces or the intestinal flora or meat consumption, mainly through the animal handlers who collect the feces, or the slaughterhouse personnel who slaughter these animals and provide the meat, through them, these multi-resistant bacteria reaches the individual, and once they are hospitalized, there is cross-infection in the hospital or via the healthcare professional. It is again transmitted to other persons, and it is transmitted to the community. And finally, the use of antibiotics in animals, it has led to gene flux, and it can affect the human health, the animal health, as well as the public health, resulting in resistance and therapeutic failures. So I don't know how many of you have noticed these statistics, how many of you are eating meat. You should know these statistics. The global trends: 45 milligram of antimicrobials are used to produce 1 kilogram of beef. 148 milligram of antimicrobials are used to produce 1 kilogram of chicken, and 172 milligram of antimicrobials are used to produce 1 kilogram of pork. This is a 2015 data, and the 2020 data is not much difference there is only a 10 to 20 milligram difference from what is shown in this graph. So it is expected that the per capita intake of meat is going to increase to 36 kilogram per year. And you can just calculate what is the extent of damage that is being done. So the top 5 countries with the largest shares of antimicrobial consumption in the food animals, they are the China. Even though the China restricted the use of growth promoters as antibiotics as growth promoters in 2016, and by 2020 they have cut down it, still China is the largest country with the largest share of antimicrobial consumption in the food animals, followed by the US, Brazil, India, and Germany. We can see from this figure that in the United States, 80% of the annual antimicrobial consumption is used in the food animals. And coming to the hotspots of antibiotics, yes, you are seeing it rightly. The Asia is the hotspot of antibiotic use in the food animals. And this decreased violet color in Africa might be due to underreporting, because the reports from Africa are still less. And the projected use of antimicrobials in 2030, we cannot see India here. India definitely is going to have an increase in the antimicrobial use by 2030. Let's go on to the statistics. China will still top, but we can see that from 2020 to 2030, there is only a 1% increase, while in Pakistan, we are expecting a 44% increase, and India a 5% increase. So what should we do? So we are going to the next session, what next? So as medical professionals, we should know about the proper use of antibiotics in animals. So for that, we need to know how to categorize the antibiotics used in animals. This is the European classification, and we know that the WHO has classified the use of antibiotics in human as the AWARE classification, that is the access, watch, and the reserve. And here we have the ABCD classification. A is for avoid. It is not authorized in the veterinary medicine, and it should not be used in livestock. It might be used in the companion animals if it is a necessity. B is the restrict. That is, it is important for human use, restricted to mitigate risk to public health, and only when the category C and D fail. And the C is the caution group. There are alternatives in the human and some veterinary infections which don't have D alternative can use the C category. And finally, the D, actually it is a P category, that is a prudence category. That is the first line for the treatment of infections in animals. And we have to use prudently only when medically needed. That is, we should not use, or the veterinarians should not use it as growth promoters, or should not use it as prophylactic or metaphylatic unless indicated. So these are the drugs coming under the avoid category. We can see the anti-TB drugs, piperacillin, tazobactam, meropenem, doripenem, linezolid, all coming under the avoid category. What about the restrict category? The drug that the Fursar has been on and on telling, colistin, it is coming under the restrict category, and it has been widely used as a growth promoter in India. And the fluoroquinolones, norfloxacin, enrofloxacin, pradofloxacin, these are again coming under the restrict category. And cefoperazone, it is again coming under the restrict category. And aminoglycosides, chloramphenicol, clindamycin, erythromycin, the macrolides, the beta-lactam antibiotic along with the beta-lactamase inhibitor, it is again coming under the caution category. And finally, which are the antibiotics that can be used in the animals? That is the prudence category. That is our ampicillin, amoxicillin, tetracycline, cloxacillin, benzathine penicillins, and sulfonamides, metronidazole, bacitracin, fusidic acid, and furosemide. The statistics shows that the most widely used antibiotic in animals is tetracycline, followed by the beta-lactams or penicillins in particular, and fluoroquinolones and macrolides have been extensively used in the animals. Now, the importance of route of administration and formulation to be chosen for preventing development of antimicrobial resistance. We should know that the local individual treatment is the most acceptable therapy for treating the food animals. That is, if there is mastitis for udder injection. Then comes the parenteral individual, followed by the oral individual treatment. And the group treatment, that is the injectable, the oral group medication mixed in water, and finally, the oral group medication via feed or premixes, they should be maximally avoided. This is a chart showing the various antibiotics that could be used in various diseases seen in animals. And what can we do? The WHO has categorized the pathogens, prioritize the pathogens to guide research and development of new antibiotics. We as modern healthcare professionals, we should understand that these are the organisms, the carbapenem-resistant Acinetobacter baumannii, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Enterobacteriaceae, which are grouped under the critical priority and for which the development of antibiotics should be looked for. So coming to the final, the 10 commandments of an antibiotic smart farmer. This was proposed by the REACT group, of which Ghaffur sir is very much a part. It is actually a proposal by the CMC Vellore that is acting against resistance and of antimicrobials. We should consider antibiotics as valuable resource and use it prudently for the health and survival of the human race. We should not use antibiotics as growth promoters. We should not use antibiotics routinely for prevention of disease and restrict usage only for treatment of affected animals. We should follow appropriate withdrawal periods for antibiotics used for treatment before harvesting and marketing of the farm produce. And we should ensure the feed used in the farm is free of antibiotics and procured from good quality manufacturers. We should ensure that adequate biosafety measures are followed and clean and hygienic environment is provided to the animals, thereby reducing the chance of spread of infection and also the need for antibiotics. Prophylactic vaccinations should be advised more than prophylactic antibiotic use. We should dispose the waste generated from the farm safely and ensure that it does not contaminate the water and soil. And we should ensure accurate labeling of the farm in all cases where antibiotics have been used. And we should not procure antibiotics. Actually, the veterinarians should decide that they are not going to prescribe antibiotic unless there is a medical indication. And finally, we should spread these commandments to our fellow medical practitioners, veterinarians, as well as the society. So this is my acknowledgement slide, and these are my references, and thank you.
Thank you so much, madam, for enriching and imparting us with knowledge on antibiotic use in livestock. She started with what are food animals and why do we use antibiotics in animals, flow of antibiotics, global trends in antibiotic use, categorization of antibiotics used in animals, and 10 commandments of an antibiotic smart farmer. Our take-home message is that antibiotics should be used in food animals prudently to prevent development of resistance and promote one health. Once more reminding you all that